It was just a couple of days ago that I got some feedback from an old video that made me realize that, of course, I should be exploring much more about my experience teaching in China. Because what happened is it has been quite a year that I've been on YouTube, and I was actually trying to transfer a bunch of videos from podcasts to YouTube about a year ago, a little short of a year ago. And I did, several were posted on YouTube, but I just discovered one that hadn't. It had been set to private. So it had never been publicly released. And I thought, well, what the heck? Because I'm getting, bigger, a little bit bigger, a few more followers and so on YouTube. I thought, well, geez, I need to put this on, take it out of private and make it public. And I saw the video and I didn't think it was that great. It was early days. I'm pretty new at this game. But I definitely have stories to tell. That's why I'm doing this. Because since coming to China, it's just blown my mind in so many ways. And the whole perspective on the West. And so this video was really just recorded about a year ago, and I was just reflecting on all the years I've been teaching in China. I've taught in 3 different cities. So I think this is one of the things that makes me unique. I'm not from just one city. I've seen different parts of China. I've also traveled to I think it's 16 provinces now. So I've seen quite a bit of China. And one of the biases I see on the reporting on China, other than the ones just rooted right in the West that are outright lies, like the massacre in Xinjiang, is a complete and utter falsehood. The CIA baked up. But there's other kind of smaller lies or just perspectives that you need to be aware of. I realize that the vast majority of kind of reports about China really come from business people in Shanghai. And you have to understand, Shanghai, yes, it's a big city, 27 million, but out of all of 1.4 billion people, it is probably the least representative city in all of China. So to get the perspective of someone from the West who's only lived in Shanghai, you are not learning about China. You are learning a very westernized version of China. I mean, they're going to meet Chinese in Shanghai, but if they're there, they're very westernized Chinese. So, which is not at all representative of the 1.4 billion, but by incessantly reporting from the same place with people with the same similar background, same bias, you get a really distorted view of China. Rather, I've been in the more traditional parts of China, different parts, and maybe now I'm in the most traditional city I've been in yet, and I've been in cities of different sizes and levels of development. I've taught at universities, and I also taught at a top high school in this province where a lot of rich kids would go to school, and these are Chinese, but we prepared them to enter international universities. So I have students from all over the world, including at Cambridge University, top universities. These people had money. And so here I'd say I'm at the other end of the spectrum more, like people from smaller towns, from rural China, Shandong province in particular, which is the agriculture province of China, but it's also like the core of China. It's where Confucius was born, in this province, which originally, when he was born, was a separate country from even this part of the province that I'm in. So the Shandong was 2 different countries. This is a couple of thousand years ago when Confucius lived. So anyway, I'm getting this wide perspective. I've also been interacting with students all these years. I'm in my ninth year. And so, these students know English. Um, and so whenever I can come across something I don't understand, I've always asked my students, and they're willing to talk about anything, even the most sensitive things. And so I think I get a deep insight about China that few hear about. And so this is why I just feel I'm just bursting to tell so many things about China that is just totally misunderstood in the West. I mean, that's a big lesson I got, is how the victors rewrite history. There's things, by coming to China, I discovered things I'd never even heard about before, like the Opium Wars. And you have to understand, if you want to understand how China looks at the world, you need to know about the Opium Wars and the 100 years of humiliation. That's how China looks at the West, is what the West did to China. And I'd never heard about this growing up in Canada, going to top schools, and so I kind of think this was hidden from me. And so I don't think it was an accident that I didn't hear about it. So this is why I've decided to do a lot more reporting about China. And, because I love China, I'll say it right up front. And no, I'm not a Communist Party member. I'll tell you all about the Communist Party, my experiences. Like, this is from the students, right? Not being a member, but finding out more about it. And so I can go deep, as deeper than any foreigner that I've seen on YouTube about China, from all the experiences I've had. And so I realize, especially when it comes to teaching, and probably universities in particular, I'm at my second university now, and I thought it would be a really good day to go for a little walk, just to give you a perspective of some of the campus, because I think it'll change a few preconceptions about China being super polluted, which is one of the images that has long been portrayed of China. This is the cleanest city I've been in. I've been in polluted cities. I've seen pollution that obliterates buildings that are across the road. I've been in air quality index levels of over 600. So I've seen some of the worst, but this is some of the best now. So I think it's important for you to understand that it's not all a big, thick cloud. And even the places that used to have the big, thick clouds, there's a lot less pollution now. It's a dramatic difference. It's the kind of change that you see in China. Very rapid, even reduction of pollution that you rarely see in the West. In the West, it just seems the same old problems go on and on and on and never get solved. But China is different. It attacks the problem and deals with it quickly. And so anyway, we just had our first snow here in Yantai. This is my view outside my window every day, looking over the university. I'm at the North Campus of Ludong University in Yantai, China. And so the first thing I want to do is just give you a perspective of where we are in the world. And so I've got a map on my laptop here I want to show you before we go out for a walk. Okay, so anyway, taking you to the map now. So I came across this map of the world. It's basically showing all the British colonies. And I thought it was really cool because it shows exactly where I am, because this is a part of China that was settled by Britain at one point in history. And so everyone knows about Hong Kong right here. I'm actually in Weihai up here. So this is where I'm located, right at the end of a peninsula. Yantai is near the tip of that peninsula. Weihai is another city near here. And so they just call this area Weihai, the tip of the peninsula, which is Shandong province. And again, you can see, to give you an idea, Seoul, Korea is just across the sea, the Yellow Sea here. That's where I flew in from. So I flew from Toronto to Seoul, Korea, and then went on to Yantai. The other thing that's interesting is that this is a big peninsula that juts out into the sea. You can see there's another peninsula here from the north. There's a city called Dalian that's right at the tip of that city. That's part of northeastern China. So basically there's a narrowing between these two places, the peninsula I'm on, the Shandong Peninsula or Jiaodong Peninsula, and the Dalian Peninsula. And so this is a key strategic area. If anyone wanted to attack Beijing, which is around here, you would have to go between these two peninsulas that jut out into the sea. So this is actually a big military area. I've never seen so much military in China as I have around here. And it's long been, there's old forts here that are, what, a couple hundred years, maybe even older, because there used to be a problem historically with pirates from Japan. But nowadays it's more considered, that this would be a way to attack Beijing by ship. You'd have to go between the two peninsulas. So there's quite a military presence here, like I've never seen before. So I'm used to traveling wherever I want to go in China. No one's ever stopped me, but here is where I've been stopped a couple times because it was turned out to be a sensitive military base or area, and so I wasn't allowed. And so anyway, just to give you that perspective of where I am in the world. So a former British colony, and I'm actually starting to do videos on colonization as I understand China more and its perspective. And I'm trying to get a sense of how the world is going to be influenced by China becoming more powerful or playing a more powerful role in the world. Okay, let's head outside. Okay, I'm in a teacher's apartment here. And as I say, we're at the North Campus of Ludong University. So I'm up on the third floor, just walking down to the exit here. And it's not too cold today, it's just like -1. And so I'll take you down to my favorite place to go for a walk. This is on campus. Excuse me. So I'm on a hill here. And so you can look down the hill. And so I remember last year when we had our first snow, I wanted to toboggan down this hill because it was covered in snow. We actually had a huge dump of snow last year. And so just walking down. So this is all on campus still. And so what's amazing is just how there's a fair bit of sort of wildness to the campus. And this area in Yantai Yantai has tons of hills all around it. They're not mountains, but hills. And so maybe a best way to look at it is if I turn this way, and you can see in the distance all the hills. So they're tree-covered hills, and they're all over Yantai, and so there's lots of tunnels through the hills. And that's one thing that strikes me about Yantai is I kind of feel like if this was in Canada, we would not have put so many tunnels through the hills. It seems like They're everywhere here. And I don't know, somehow in Canada, I just get this sense that we would avoid tunnel because of maybe the cost or difficulties and of building them. Like, they're beautiful tunnels. And so that makes me think of the role of the Chinese in building tunnels, the railways in the US and Canada. That's why they were first brought over, because they had a talent for building tunnels. And because now I've been in China for a while, I didn't have this perspective when I first got here. So it's just the education, being here that long and now having read so much about China, it really starts changing your perspective. So to be here and see the tunnels, they're beautiful tunnels. They're like, there's room for bicycles, there's room for pedestrians, they're really well lit. They're like the best tunnels you can imagine. And of course, that's what China's kind of famous for, is the infrastructure. And again, I just spotted it now. I hadn't thought about talking about this, but we're getting closer to the hills here, and there's a lake. This is all on campus, the edge of campus. I don't even think a lot of students know about this lake here. It's just a small lake, but if I turn around, you can see it's incredible. And if you look in the hills, this is another thing I've learned, is that there's terracing everywhere. I don't know if you can see some line. I think you should be able to if you look carefully. But you go just in the forest with all the trees, you can see as we walk up in the hills, there's all this terracing. And so you really get and I see it everywhere. So I've always associated it just with rice growing areas in China. But around here, because we have so many hills, you see it everywhere. And so I get a sense that any place in China has terracing. You know, the whole place has had human civilization for thousands of years. And so you see the result of that. And coming from Canada, I think this also gives me a perspective, because I've been in a lot of really wild areas in Canada. So realizing here, this has always been, or has been settled for thousands of years, it's different. And so this is a place I like to go for a walk in the morning. And and this lake, like, this was it, like discovering this lake so close to where I live on campus. As you can see, it was like a 5-minute walk. And lots of times you see people fishing here. So there's a ton of fish in here. I've been here for a year, and I've been regularly walking to this lake, and I think this is the most productive lake I've ever seen in my life. I mean, there's tons, and of course it's mainly carp, but carp are native of China. They're not introduced like they are in Canada, and that's what people eat. You know, China, I think something like 70 species of carp live in China, so that's where carp largely come from. And then there's some other kind of species, but in the summer, it's just incredible population. You see them jumping, and people are fishing for them. And so you see some birds. I have a background in bird watching, so I know some of the birds here. And maybe this is part of the reason why I'm really into this idea of one world. Like, stop demonizing China. Stop saying it's so nasty. It's another civilization. We're all humans. We can learn from China. And I think what kind of feeds that philosophy is my background in nature. I used to teach environmental science, for instance, and I've long been a bird watcher all my life. And I can tell you, when I come here, it's kind of a funny story, but when I go birding here, I've got a bird book and I've got my binoculars. When I walk through the forest here, I feel more at home than I do, say, walking into the city. Because Chinese, I still don't know Chinese. It still sounds so alien to me and difficult to understand and so on. But I understand the birds because I used to do bird studies in Canada and I would identify birds by their song. And so to walk through China, some of the songs right away, they remind me of certain birds in Canada. And so I know it's not going to be the same species, but I can tell it's a similar dialect or something like that. And so I'll know, for instance, this is a wren, a type of wren. And so right away I know the kind of family that the birds come from. And so that's pretty cool to be in China and, knowing the birds, being able to identify at least the family that they're coming from because of the song, the dialect that they're singing reminds me of a similar bird in Canada. And so when I go in the forest here, I feel at home, and it's a really good reminder, as much as we demonize each other as humans, how ridiculous it is. We're all one, and so knowing the animals and the plants reminds you of that, where it's not us and them. It's the birds don't care that they're in China. They don't care if it's a communist government. So what? So it's different, that's all. And so anyway, here, I didn't talk about this building here. This building behind me apparently is like a museum. I've been in there once for an art show. But I believe it's a regular museum that has different shows. And there's another building we passed that I didn't talk about. It's a big auditorium that we have on campus. And so if there's any big kind of event, gathering of people, that's where it takes place. And it's quite big. I would say it must be 2,000 to 3,000 people it holds, and it's quite nice inside. So there's different sort of festivals that are celebrated there, and it seems to be used by people in the area outside the university. Often I see busloads of younger students come here to gather for various things. Recently, there's quite a few. Recently there seemed to be some kind of fire education program that they came for, and they came by buses. So you see hundreds of students walk through here. So anyway, now you're starting to see the university. So the university, I guess, is all kind of, I'm on the north campus, so we're looking south now. And all the snow here. And oh yes, I also wanted to show up here. There's different roads through the hills. And so you can go for a walk there. But what's really strange, I don't understand this. I still have not got a good reason why. You just find this. This is something about China. They fence off everything. Everything is, there's sort of different zones. So, we heard about that during COVID. This is nothing to do with communism. This turns out from my reading, this is the history of China. This is how they managed their huge population. So they would have different sectors and maybe walled off or fenced off. And so up here, this road, there's no way to get to this road without going through the proper gate. And when you go to that gate, they always open it. I've never had them not, except for a period where I was told that they were doing some preparation for fire, because there's a big paranoia about fire around here, and it's because it gets so dry. So,
Hello.
Photographer, hi.
Yeah.
So what are you taking pictures of?
You know, the winter snow.
Yeah, it's beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, not too cold.
Wow. You are taking a video,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's worth to. I'm sorry, my English is not.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I have a YouTube channel.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm Chinese. Great. What do you think of this scenery? Is beautiful.
Oh yeah, yes, yeah. I love this lake. This is my favorite place.
You're
Yeah.
a teacher.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great.
So I live near here on campus, so I come here almost every day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great. The lake is so beautiful.
Yeah.
I
Well-
always take picture in there.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, enjoy your photography. It looks like a nice camera.
Yes, this camera is so great.
Oh yeah, that's.
And this lens is overqualified.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So
You
what?
know, it's so big, and the lens is great. Okay.
Oh yeah. Looks. So how powerful is that lens? What is that?
Sorry, pardon.
The size of the lens. What is
Size
it? The
of
focal length?
Is 100 and.
Oh, so it's a zoom lens.
Yes, it's
Okay.
a little lens.
Yeah. No kidding.
Right.
Oh wow.
Wow,
Oh, that's pretty cool.
great. As you
Okay.
can see, it's great.
Oh yeah.
Wow, right.
Oh yeah. Holy smokes. That's amazing.
Yes,
Oh, you must be getting some good pictures.
great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nice to talk to you. Bye now.
Nice to talk to you too.
So you can see it's very friendly. This is the way it is. Everyone's interested in the foreigner. And so that's what it's like. So I fell in love with China, as I've talked about earlier, just from the very beginning, because it was so different. And I was treated so well, you know, if you're a teacher. And from the West, I think especially, you're really treated well, and so it's hard not to want to go back. And I'm like very adventurous person, so I love to try different things, explore different things, and I've just found this culture is so different that I wanted to stay. I wanted to understand it, and I've almost been like a anthropologist from the beginning, because I've traveled a fair bit around the world, and I've never been to a place where culture has felt so different to me. And so that's what grabbed me from the beginning, and I just made up my mind that I was going to pay a lot of attention to everything that happened to me, and be very conscious and try and make sense of it. And where I couldn't make sense, I would turn to Chinese people, typically students, to ask them to help me understand some strange thing that might have happened to me, like buying something or whatever. And so that's what I've done. And I can pretty much say I've been doing that for 9 years. It's almost like I'm not a trained anthropologist, but I do know, sort of qualitative research, inductive research, and so I'm constantly thinking about things that I come across, really trying to understand it, especially since discovering I think the West is completely out to lunch when it comes to China. And what helps me to understand why is it's now been identified through research that people in China actually think differently. And they have for thousands of years. And that's why the West doesn't get China. What people do incessantly, and I don't care what university, Oxford, Harvard, you name it, if they haven't been regularly visiting China, they use their Western lens to understand China. In other words, their Western bias, the focus on freedom. Sure, I love freedom like everyone else. I've been to some of the freest places on the planet in the wilderness, virtually alone. And so I know what freedom is about, but I'm fascinated. In China, it's more about stability and harmony and getting along. And of course, I'm also fascinated by that too. Like, there's incredible kind of a harmonious way people interact with each other. It's just so kind, like I've never witnessed before. And so after talking about kindness, here, this is what I wanted to show you that really knocks you out. Like, look at that barbed wire. That's razor wire, and it's rusty, and it goes all the way along this fence. So this is the only spot where there's none. They somehow missed it, but if you go and look all the way along this fence, it's everywhere. This is very rare to find a spot that was missed. And so this is the part I don't get. It's like, we're in China. What are you trying to separate me from this road for? Like, why can't, this is a gate. It did open, I guess, at some time, but I have no idea. Like, I had a student tell me it had something to do with COVID and they just haven't changed back yet. I don't know. I have no idea why. And I was just hiking with a Chinese friend last weekend. We were up right in the hills, like right at the top of the hills in the forest, and we wanted to hike to the other side, but we couldn't because there was a huge fence. Often these fences are they're not small, and they're virtually impossible to climb, and with barbed wire. And so all I can guess is I know from my reading that Xi'an, which is the city where the terracotta warriors are, the old name for that city is Chang'an. So it used to be the biggest city in the world in its heyday, a couple thousand years ago. Or no, not quite as much as that, 1,300 years ago, I guess, 1,400. And apparently that's how the whole city was organized into these sectors. And so they would have a drum tower that would they'd beat on the drums when it was time at nighttime, and everyone was supposed to run to their sector where they lived by a certain time, or you'd get in trouble. I think you couldn't get it. They'd close the gates and you'd get in trouble if you're caught in the wrong sector at night. It was just the security they had, and I'm guessing maybe it was because of raids from surrounding countries at the time, and maybe a paranoia about being invaded, because it had been invaded a few times. I'm just guessing. I don't know, but what I've heard is that it is the model of all cities in China. And so you see this walled approach to everything, the Great Wall, it's everywhere. And so, yeah, so they seem to do it on the landscape too. And so, hard to understand. Anyway, it looks way more threatening, like as a Westerner, it looks really threatening, but I'm used to it now. When I first saw it, I totally thought, wow, it kind of scared me. As far as I know, it has nothing to do with military that's here. I was talking about. They actually show there's a ski hill here, so they do and so there's a sign right beside the ski hill, and where they actually show a picture of a firing range, and it says in Chinese, you know, be careful, kind of thing. Don't leave the boundaries of the ski hill because it's a firing range. And so, like, that's just a big sign, so it's not hidden. And so, I mean, you just find that that's really kind of interesting. It's sort of wondering if it was the U.S. or something, if there'd be a lot more secrecy about it. So, just to give you an idea, I've seen it because I love cycling around and seeing the area. I've always cycled in China. I love to explore the rural villages. And so there's a few people here this morning for a walk. This is where I see people do Tai Chi all around some squares here. Maybe I should show them. You can see some of the people, get more of a perspective of where I am. And so we're on the back side of the lake now. And so I've cycled along these roads that are fenced off. And as I say, I guess I didn't talk about the gate. There's a security guard, to go through the gate to get on that road. Always smiling and friendly, trying to speak English. And, again, I bring my Western mindset, and there's like a fence with razor wire on it, and there's a guard there. It looks very intimidating, but it's just the way it is. You just get used to it. And I always find the guards are never difficult. I always get let in, and they want to talk to me. Actually, they're quite friendly and say hello. And so when I'm with Chinese friends, they can do more translating. I understand some Chinese, but I've been so focused on educating myself about the culture. That is why I haven't got around to learning the language, because it's a huge investment of time, as is learning about the culture. So I'm making it easier for you folks who aren't as interested in investing that time and learning about China. So really, that's my whole channel, is like a Western perspective. Someone who's knowledgeable of Western civilization and who's becoming more knowledgeable of Chinese civilization. And I'm happy to say I am starting to reach levels that I feel much more comfortable with Chinese friends starting to say that you know more than I do about Chinese history just because of the questions I ask. So, and because I'm always double checking, I don't want to misrepresent anything. I want to be as honest as possible. I really don't. I'm just fascinated. I mean, my bias is that I'm fascinated by different things. And so I'll state that up front, and I'd say I fell in love with China because of how I was treated. It's just been a wonderful journey, so fascinating. And so those are my biases, but in terms of, which government system and so on, I'm not so strong on either. There's benefits and problems with every type of governance. One isn't supreme above all the others. So I don't necessarily think democracy is the very best, especially the form we have in the West, electoral democracy, which I see now being taken over by business interests. And I don't think it's near as democratic as you'd like to believe. And as I learn about China, what's basically happening is that we can all see the lack of democracy, the extent to which we don't live in democracies in the West, because it's controlled by business interests, powerful interests, class interests, and we can all see that. That's pretty obvious. But But you have to do some research on China. And the research I'm doing, it makes China look more democratic than you think when you learn about the whole system of government. So this is also a theme I talk about because I have a background in governance. Because it's amazing the connections, but I have a PhD in forestry, and but what I was really interested in was community forestry, and so alternative ways to manage forests for sustainable reasons. And so I got into sort of alternative institutions that allow input from the public on the management of forests. So I got really into alternative governance. And so this kind of helps inform what I'm learning about China. And China is actually very well known for having a very sophisticated system of governance for centuries. And so instead of just dismissing it, as a person who is already looking at alternative models of governance, because typically in Canada, our forests are managed by the state, and there's a long history, and Marx is even involved in this long history, where he criticizes how the state took control over forests in Europe, in Germany, from communities who managed the forest in a different way. So I got right into the history. So I'm telling you all this to just give you a picture of my perspective and why I'm open to these alternative models that I didn't grow up with. And anyway, I'm just circling back to my apartment, and I didn't talk so much about this dorm. So there's a couple of dorms here, and for students, and one of my students is in one of these. And so talking to her, what I was told is that these are for students who have problems living with other students. So I think maybe not getting along. And of course in China, you gotta get along. And so, because the first thing is like, how many roommates are you typically gonna have at a university in Canada? I would say one. I'm trying to think. That's the most I can think of, is that you might share a room with one person. Well, in China, it's 5 people, 6 to a room. So just imagine that. And we're talking, they're all in bunk beds. I've seen pictures. I've never been in a room, but I see pictures from the students. And there's basically like 3 bunk beds in a very small room. And I guess shared bathroom with other rooms of 6 people, and that's how they live. So you're basically on top of each other, and of course people have different times they go to bed and whatnot. And so with all this and studying and pressure, not everyone's always going to get along. So apparently my understanding is that if there's some kind of problem with people getting along, this is a building where that person can be moved to. These buildings that are here. And so that's what happened to one of my students with her roommates. And anyway, that's only the beginning. I have a lot more to talk about. Living on a university campus in China. GoPro, stop recording.